Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. When two sides are engaged in a war, the aim is obviously victory. And here, defeat in a war means you're dead or pretty much humiliated. That's usually what happens. We have this war on the territory of Ukraine. And obviously there's the Russians fighting 30 countries on the other side of the aisle, let's put it this way. And you have a lot of losses on both sides. The problem is the outcome. Because if you remember, Soviet Union had a lot of losses or big losses during the Second World War, and eventually they got to Berlin. And they closed the deal over there. Yes, there were tens of millions of casualties during the war and all that. The Soviets had the most, but they won. Here we have Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, giving us some numbers on the Ukrainians' casualties during the new offensive that started a week and a half ago, so almost 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks without 2 days. And you can give me the casualties. It's like the Germans, let's say 1 day before they surrendered, they say, well, the Russian casualties are, I don't know how many thousands of tanks, how many millions of people, how many Yeah, but these guys are in Berlin, you know what I mean, by Alexanderplatz, or, you know, the Führerbunker. So sometimes it matters, but sometimes it doesn't really matter because you have to put it in a context. So let's see how many tanks and armored vehicles Ukraine lost, according to the Russians, in 7, let's say, 12 days since the counteroffensive started. But the question is, did they advance? This comes from Sputnik. It's an hour ago, on June 16th, 2023. Putin says that Kiev has lost 186 tanks, 418 armored vehicles, losses mounting. Yeah, but if they're by Moscow, then it doesn't really matter. I'm just exaggerating. I'm just putting in this kind of perspective. So, it matters if these things are with a purpose or not. You can tell me this, but if they broke the front and they're heading towards, Vladivostok, then that's not good news. So, Ukrainian forces launched a long-awaited counteroffensive earlier this month after stocking up on NATO weapons, including Leopard heavy tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles. The offensive has stalled, according to the Russians, after running into well-prepared Russian defensive lines. I agree with that. Otherwise, they're weasels. With even Kiev's Western backers expressing concerns about Ukraine's heavy losses. That's correct. Ukraine has failed to reach any strategic objectives amid its ongoing counteroffensive. I think that's correct. Not even the Ukrainians are claiming, breaking the contact lines or anything like that. Losing 186 tanks and 418 armored vehicles to date, as losses continue to mount, Putin said. And I'm quoting, in some places, Ukrainian forces managed to reach the first line of defense. In some places, not. There's not the question. End quote. Putin said, speaking to reporters during the plenary session of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum on Wednesday. I think that's the question. That's not the question. Well, I don't know. You can have they reach the first line of defense, in some places not. Okay. See what else this guy has to say, and I'm quoting. The question revolves around the fact that they are using their so-called strategic reserves, which consist on several components. Oh my. The first is meant to be used to break Russian defenses. The second to use forces to entrench their foothold over territory. They have not reached their goals at a single section of the front. This is what is important. Well, according to you, now I don't know if that's true or not, but this is what Vladimir Putin said. Now, if that's the case and you have those losses, then so far this is not a Ukrainian victory. So far. It's not over. And I'm quoting again, their losses are indeed very large. even more than 10-1 compared to the Russian army. Oh, the Americans, I think it was a newspaper an expert who said that it's the other way around, actually. Well, I tend to believe Putin on this one, I gotta say that. Maybe not 10-1, let's say 7-1 or 5-1, but I wouldn't go to 10-1. But hey, that's what the guy said, I'm just gonna read it. This is a fact. Okay, when you have to overemphasize something, it's like, what's his name, St. Peter, when he refused to acknowledge Jesus 3 times. Well, I'm telling you, I don't know that man. No, man, I've never met that man. No, you got it wrong, man. 3 times, and then cock-a-doodle-doo, kukurigu, as Romanians would say. And Rooster came out and said, hey, you. He said, you will. In terms of equipment, losses are mounting daily. As of today, this includes 186 tanks lost and 418 armored vehicles of various classes, Putin said. There's no doubt the Russians destroyed Leopard tanks and Bradleys. I think we don't have to really try to make a case now, because they showed videos, and even the Western, even NATO agreed that they lost this equipment. Russia's defense enterprises are working round the clock to supply the military with weapons, working double or even triple shifts, Putin said. And I'm quoting, we have increased the output of military production by 2.7 times, and when it comes to the most needed equipment, by 10 times. I'm glad you have resources. As for Ukrainian forces, Putin predicted that, and I'm quoting, soon they will stop using its own equipment. I think that's true entirely, because it's being systematically destroyed. And I'm quoting, everything they're using to do battle and everything they're using is coming from abroad. One can't fight that way for long. That's true, but it depends how vested the Westerns are in this war. Putin also once again took the opportunity to delve into the root causes of the present crisis, saying, and I'm quoting, the war in Ukraine, in southeastern Ukraine, was started by the Kiev regime with the support of the Western sponsors okay, we already know that one. Kiev refused to entertain an end to the Donbass crisis, we know that one. And then they didn't implement the Minsk agreements, right here, Weasel, and another one is, this is the French one, should be, yeah, François Hollande, there you go. So these weasels, right here, actually right here. So he's ending up, or the article ends up, obviously, with telling us who's who and what's what. What we have to take out of this so far is that the Ukrainians are conducting a counteroffensive, not very successful, I would say not successful, but it's not over. Usually, when you conduct this kind of a surprise attack, because they were like, we're not going to tell you when it starts. We're not going to tell you when it starts. Well, why? Because you want the surprise factor. Well, the surprise factor is like gone. So you remain with the same thing. That's it. I don't think anything will happen over there. You had your first push and the surprise is gone. Therefore, if the surprise is this and the push is this is gone, you come back to this. So it doesn't mean that the Russians are not depleted of their equipment and forces and so on. But they're defending now. And they got time to prepare, like the Ukrainians had time to prepare as well, when the Russians were coming over. So these are the losses according to the Russians / Vladimir Putin. Could be accurate. I'm not denying that, but there's no way for me to verify it. Even the Westerners are acknowledging that the counteroffensive doesn't go really the way they hoped, and that the Ukrainians are advancing on certain kind of lines here, but not, with a lot of losses. They don't mention how many and so on. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.